All right, hello, and this is the Pro Wrestling Program. My name is Kyle, and today we are going to be taking a look at the AEW Dynamite quarterly hour ratings for November 8th, 2023. The show averaged 804,000 viewers, which is a little bit lower than what they've been hitting in the past few weeks, past 2 months. I would say we would probably be on an average about 850, so it is a little bit lower, but we still at least hit the 800,000, and it didn't dip below because we had at one point hit under 800,000, and that was because of Orange Cassidy main eventing at one point in time that dropped that main event into the 600,000 viewers. So that's what you get when you put Orange Cassidy in the main event. But anyway, let's get on and look at the quarterly ratings, because for the most part, it was fairly steady. There was a dip in the second hour that went lower than the average, what they normally go down to, but the main event still ended up being at one mark. So we're going to start off really strong, which is always what happens with Dynamite. It's going to dip a little bit. It's going to come back around the 9 o'clock hour, which normally happens. Then it's kind of starts to go down, and the main event ends up being here from where we started. What happened is that we hit the 9 o'clock, we dipped a lot more, but we still ended up where the main event usually ends up, unless it's an actual big main event or an Orange Cassidy main event where it goes lower. So if it's a big main event that has like Omega or MJF, Punk used to be up there, Danielson, all those kinds of guys that are actual draws, it tends to go up a little bit more. If it's a big cage match, I know that the cage match for Omega and Mox did very well earlier this year, where they came back. Blood and Guts, obviously, those big matches, those actual big main events are going to see a rise. When it's not big names, you're not going to see as much of a rise. I think the Juice, though, is starting to become a little bit of a draw for AEW, and considering he just started this year for them, that's pretty impressive. I like this. He's not a big draw by any means, because we're going to see where it ends up here, but he brought the numbers back from where it was. So let's start off with quarter one, 8 p.m. to 8:15 p.m. We had MJF, Adam Cole, Daniel Garcia, a backstage promo, which involved the Kingdom and Roderick Strong as well. And then we had the beginning of MJF versus Garcia with picture-in-picture ads, which means that the commercial is taking the majority of the screen, and then you have a smaller screen for the actual match. I don't like picture-in-picture, but I think AEW thinks that it works. That was at 892,000 viewers. That was by far the biggest number that they hit, and then it's just going to start going down from there, which is generally what happens with Dynamite. Dynamite, for the most part, starts off strong and starts to dip. Quarter two, 8:15 p.m. to 8:30 p.m., the continuation of the MJF and Garcia match. The post-match, we had an ad break and Mark Briscoe video, and the Darby Allin and Sting versus Outrunners match, and the post-match, which was a very short match. 827,000 viewers. So we lost about 7% of the viewers. That would be what? 90, like 65,000 viewers that we lost there. But not a crazy dip. It's 7% is acceptable, I guess, for Dynamite. But it's, considering that it's MJF versus Garcia. MJF is your top draw, and I think that that's where they wanted to have two strong quarters here. But you then had Mark Briscoe, and they kind of had to have a video for him to kind of hype up the main event, because Mark Briscoe isn't used on AEW all the time. He is still more of a Ring of Honor guy that is not known to all the casuals necessarily. The AEW hardcore audience definitely knows him, but I would say that the casuals don't know him as well. So you definitely had to, it was a good idea to do this, but Garcia is more of a mid-carder. So him going for the world title, I think that might have been potentially what the reason was. Maybe it was the Sting and Darby Allin versus Outrunners match. We all know that Sting and Darby are going to win this, clearly, and that it's not going to be a crazy long match either, which it wasn't. So that might have played a part as well. Next, we had the quarter three, 8:30 p.m. to 8:45 p.m. This was the Tony Storm and Hikaru Shida angle, where they were talking in the backstage and having their interview segment with Tony Schiavone. And then we also had the beginning of Penta versus Swerve match, also with through picture-in-picture angles, or ads, sorry. 814,000 viewers, so we lost 2% there. Not that big of a number. I feel like Tony Storm is definitely I think a draw for AEW. We're going to kind of see that, but she has the most character development for on the women's side of things. And Hikaru Shida is your current women's champion. Then we also had the Penta versus Swerve match, which I think to the AEW audience, this is definitely something that they were kind of looking forward to. I do like Swerve quite a bit. And Penta can have good matches as well. Then we had quarter four, 8:45 p.m. to 9 p.m., the continuation of that match, along with the post-match angle with Adam Page, Jay White backstage promo, and the Kenny Omega video, along with an ad break. And then we had the Jericho and Omega interview where the Bucks showed up as well. 818,000 viewers. So we gained 4,000 viewers. Not that big of a deal. Kind of what you would expect as we're nearing that 9 o'clock quarter, which generally does very well. Quarter 5, 9 p.m. to 9:15 p.m., Samoa Joe versus Keith Lee, also through picture-in-picture ads, the Joe Live promo afterwards, and the Orange Cassidy promo. We gained 6% viewers here at 866,000. So we gained what? Close to 40,000 viewers here. Not bad. I think that with Joe there, that probably, I think, was the biggest draw, because I do think that Joe is a draw for AEW, not their biggest draw, but like one of the upper guys. And him going up against Keith Lee, two big dudes for the Ring of Honor television title, seemed like an interesting build-up to me. This was the biggest draw for me personally, so that's what I was looking forward to the most. And I was kind of hoping that it would main event, although the Jay White versus Mark Briscoe still worked, and considering he's the number one contender, or it was a number one contenders match for Full Gear for the world title of AEW instead of Ring of Honor, that made sense too. So then we have the next quarter, quarter 6, 9:15 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. This was the Bollywood Boys versus the Guns in a like under a minute match. The Guns promo afterwards, John Moxley backstage promo, an ad break, and Red Velvet versus Julia Hart, also through picture-in-picture ads. We lost 11%, 769,000 viewers, almost 100,000 viewers dipped out for this. Not good. I mean, I don't know if this has to do with the Guns. Potentially, I could see that. They were also up against the Bollywood Boys. I thought literally those were jobbers that like were local talent. So I understand kind of why people would dip out for that. And then knowing that the Julia Hart versus Red Velvet match, it's not a draw. I think that there is starting to be people that are getting behind Julia Hart, but not enough to watch her in a match against Red Velvet, which I think nobody expected to go anywhere. And then we had the next quarter, 9:30 p.m. to 9:45 p.m., the continuation of the Red Velvet and Julia Hart match, the post-match with Willow Nightingale, Sky Blue, Chris Statlander, RG City, Mariah May, backstage angle, ad break, and the beginning of Mark Briscoe versus Jay White. We lost another 9%, 696,000 viewers. So like another 70,000 viewers dipped out. So it just, basically the women's match just really made that rating dive down. However, I will say that at 9:45 p.m. to 10 p.m., the quarter 8 Mark Briscoe versus Jay White continuation with picture-in-picture, and then the MJF Bullet Club Gold live angle afterwards, 750,000 viewers. So we gained 8%. We went up 54,000 viewers at that point in time to kind of bring it back, considering it was dipping so much, which was kind of nice to see. And that's why I think that Jay White is becoming slowly a little bit of a draw. But it's just that women's match that Tony has always put in right before the main event. For whatever reason, I don't understand why he doesn't try to mess around with that and put that somewhere else. I don't know if it's good to put it maybe in quarter 2 or quarter 3 of the show, but it's clearly hurting the show. Or maybe start booking the women's division. Obviously, he should be trying to book the women's division differently, but knowing that there's going to be a women's match that usually doesn't lead to anything is really making people start to dip out for the main event. And depending on what the main event is, they might not come back. So that's hard to say, but the biggest drop would have been 11% that we got in just one quarter. And that is not as high as Raw earlier this week, where they had the Women's Battle Royale, and at some point in time, they lost 300,000 in one quarter, which was 20% of the audience at that point in time. That's a much bigger drop. So normally it's AEW that has the big drops. This week, it's Raw so far. We'll see what happens with SmackDown and Collision after this weekend. So that's everything. I kind of went over what I for the most part, kind of stayed steady after that quarter 2, I would say. If you look at quarter 2, we went from 827,000 to 750. lost about 75,000 viewers. Not horrible. So that's it. Let me know in the comments below what you think about the ratings, and you have all been bearded in. Beardage.